welcome on stage Axelle LEMAIRE, our minister. First of all, I need to congratulate you because you have another portfolio now. You have innovation.
Yes.
On top of... So Axelle and I met when she was a Congress person in London. You were covering the Nordics. So you are an elected minister, which is very important because you've been selected by the population. It was a pleasure to have you last year. It was a digital presence through paper, if you remember. And you kindly accept to close our conference when we launched the book to give the view on what's going on. And it's a real pleasure to welcome you, Axelle, again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, François. It is a pleasure to be here, as usual, in Montpellier, with you and with Idat. And I must say I'm very impressed by the work that is being done within the organization. It is impressive because you're really becoming a leader of not only a local ecosystem, but counting at the national and international level, which is also why we're having this discussion in English. According to Article 2 of the French Constitution, le français est la langue officielle de la République. And as a French official, my duty is to speak French. But what I get to see at the international level is that the French language, the French values are progressively regressing. And my conception is that we need to promote diversity and not exclusivity, and it's by actually acting and doing things and being powerful and competitive that we will manage to spread what we're promoting at the international level. In order to do that, we need to be understood. So don't take the fact that I speak English as a lack of respect for the French language. It's exactly the opposite.
English is a digital language, by the way. So.
Yes, and I hope French will one day become the digital language, just as the Olympic language. You know, in the Olympic Games, there are 2 official languages. Well, in the digital world, we also need more than 1 official language.
And Axelle, you can be sure at IDAT we will promote that. Axelle, I'd like to start my first question by the Digital Republic Act, la loi pour une république numérique, and you've battled with passion, energy, and methods, and the law has been passed, which is excellent. But if we want to link this with the digital trust, what are the key elements of these laws essential to build digital trust in France?
So first of all, let me congratulate you for picking that subject for your annual gathering this year, because trust is at the heart of not only the digital economy, but also the digital society, the digital environment, the digital world. And I remember when I initially started talking about trust, especially with some industrial actors, they were telling me, oh, no, this means regulation. I was like, no, it's not about regulating. It's about enabling, exactly. It's about empowering and creating all the guarantees to ensure that we create the right environment for the growth of the digital sector. But this is not a physical sector in the sense that we need trust more than anything else in order to ensure that growth. 2 days ago, you've probably seen a new leak scandal with, this time it's called Adult Friend Finder, Yahoo, the presidential campaign in the US, with this sort of public cyber war taking place in the United States and Russia. All this to say, in a world that is open to unsecurity, the digital players are there to ensure trust. So trust and confidence on the part of public administrations. And I think one of the best ways to guarantee that is through transparency. So the first title of the Digital Republic Bill is about transparency and innovation in the public sector, especially through introducing, and this is very ambitious because there are only a few countries doing that in Europe and in the world, the principle of open data by default. It means that any single public administration, be it at the local or national level, will have to open the data it produces for the public. And one might think that actually belongs to the citizens, but not only for that reason, also because we know that there are the resources of the 21st century and that innovative companies can use and reuse them in order to produce new economic and social values. That's the first title. Second title is entirely about trust, especially trust for the consumers, so that they buy online, so that they feel that their personal data are being protected, and so that there's more competition and a free and open environment for the digital transactions and exchanges in general. So through different principles, loyalty of platforms, information, transparency of the information provided to the users, portability of data, right to be forgotten, adapted to certain circumstances, etc., etc. And the third title, which is just as important, is about how to ensure that everyone trusts the system. And I think, given the current political circumstances at the European level, but also what's happening in the United States, the very strong message that some people are sending to governments at the moment, it's distrust. It's we distrust the system. And my conviction is that one of the reasons for that is a lack of transparency, but it's also the feeling that some of the public policies that are being implemented only benefit to some people and not to all. So it's just simply not possible to nowadays draft a bill without having that third title and third chapter. And believe me, it was hard to convince the people in Bercy, which is the Ministry of the Economy, that we needed to ensure social inclusion and that we needed to ensure territorial inclusion. And in that respect, the telecommunication operators play a crucial role in providing connectivity to everyone in order to provide the benefits of a digital society to everyone. So that's basically, sorry I was a bit long, how the bill looks like.
Quick question, before being minister, you were député des Français à l'étranger, and one of your remit was the Nordic country. We had a fantastic presentation for the CEO of KMD, Eva Bernke, and I saw a slide I didn't like at all. It shows all the Nordic countries, top digitized countries, and France was on the right with a little market share in these topics. How do you explain that? Can we recover? And what's the plan? I know it's not, I just wanted you to have some thoughts. I know it's not it's on your agenda, but it's not your total responsibility. But what do we need to do to be number one?
So this presentation was about public services and administration,
the digitization,
right?
It's public services, it's...
In general. I feel very much Nordic. And you know what? I had to exercise the current position in the French government to realize how Nordic I feel.
I'm sure they inspire you, by the way.
So I was, you might know that I was born in Quebec, and I must say hello to my dad, who's from Drummondville, somewhere sitting in the room.
We had your mom yesterday.
This really is part of my culture. And then I used to represent the French people who live in the Nordic countries. So when I arrived in Paris to sit in the National Assembly, I had that little Nordic suitcase with me. And which is why I'm putting, I believe, so much emphasis in transparency, accountability, and trust. And it's so interesting when you look at the level of trust in the Nordic societies, it is higher than in other countries, and especially France, and this can be measured. I met startups and entrepreneurs that actually use some data to measure that level of trust in organizations, be them private entities or public bodies. So this is a reality. So I think the challenge for a country like France is to try to improve the level of trust, and it's more urgent than before. So this capacity to innovate and this capacity to reform the system because there's a high level of trust, I think is key to success. And when you look at, let's say, Finland, for example, now at the moment,
number three country.
Yeah, all the most innovative countries in the world come from Northern Europe. It's impressive. So when Finland is reforming its educative system at the moment through very, very radical reforms. This can only be done because people trust public policies. Take Denmark, they're very advanced in smart cities and in the level of interaction between municipalities and the private sector. This can only be done through trust. I was in Stockholm recently meeting with entrepreneurs from the tech ecosystem. They're extremely innovative. Again, that's an example. Iceland, democratic innovation through the writing of their constitution. All this is innovation comes with trust and transparency. So this is really the message that I'm trying to get through, not only this government, but all the French policies that we're... So to answer your question, we are lagging behind when it comes to digitalization of SMEs, of small and medium enterprises. Yes, they're not online enough, they don't use the social networks, they don't do any e-export, they don't use data, and they don't ensure high levels of enough of privacy and of security for their IT systems. That's clear. We're working on that. The Conseil National du Numérique wrote very, very good recommendations that we are implementing at the moment together with Michel Sapin, the economy minister. We are good at the dematerialization of digital services to some extent. We're actually very good in the international rankings, not only European. The challenge now is to have more efficient IT systems within the public administrations and to ensure that it embarks everyone. We're very good on open data. I think the bill I presented to Parliament will boost again the country, and we're hosting the OGP, the Open Government Partnership Summit in Paris in December, and that will be an occasion to showcase how France good is actually when it comes to open government. But so really depends what we're talking about. When about the connectivity, when I look at the figures and the stats, I'm like, oh, is this real? First, we don't always measure exactly in the same terms. So if you compare how well France is covered in terms of mobile and fixed coverage compared with other countries, we're lagging behind. The reality is not so much of that, but I'm not in denial. What we've done in this government for the past 4 years in the amount of public investment, but also in encouraging and promoting private investment to ensure connectivity to all by 2022 is extremely ambitious and will put, and take what I'm saying now, take it in 10 years' time, and you will say she was right. And I'm sorry to sound so good. France will be the best and better connected country in Europe by then. And you might know that the European Commission just gave its green light to the Plan France Très Haut Débit. And I was in Brussels on Monday. I met 3 European commissioners, and I was myself impressed. But they were all greeting and congratulating me for that plan, telling me that they would use it as an example for the other countries.
So Axelle, we have a deal. In 10 years, you come back here, and you will see. By the way, so I'm full of hope now. By the way, Grishka and Igor Bogdanov showed us prediction in 2005 and what happened in 2016, and they were right. So I would tend to trust you.
It happens sometimes.
Two quick questions about centralizing private data. You mentioned all the leaks and the scandal. What is your view of the role of the state between the explosion of the privatization of the data and the role of the government? Is there a balance? And how do you see this happening in France? I know it's very high on the agenda.
I think the respect for privacy and for security of information systems are two not only fundamental rights and things that need to be protected because we have values and convictions, yes, but not only. They are the two main assets of the European digital companies, including the telecommunication operators. If we look at the international level, if we compare our strategic strengths and weaknesses compared with the other competitors throughout the world, what we can bring, and in particular thanks to regulations, is an environment that is more protected and that is safer. So in a context where trust is so important, we need to play that card at its max. And so this has consequences in the way we address the question of data. So when we say open data, and where we're opening the data produced by administrations, it doesn't mean that there's no capacity for public actors and companies to reuse these data, but what we're looking at is to enable, again, it's about enabling the state itself and public administrations to have a strategic use of the data they produce. And instead of sitting on treasures that are being unexploited, they need to start using public data in a smart way and to help the national ecosystem to raise in quality and awareness about that strategic use of data. That is the objective that we're following. Then from a more technological point of view, I am convinced that the trends to come are more and more towards decentralization because they provide more security and safety, and well, towards encryption as well, so that comes as an added extra to a decentralized system. And I think many private companies have understood that. Some public entities are also working on that. Take the Banque de France, for example. Who knows in this room that the Banque de France is working on building its own infrastructure, and it's stocking and using and producing massive amounts of data stored based on the blockchain technologies. Banque de France, blockchain. You do, but you might be the only two ones in the room, right? But it's also possible to be innovative in that sector. But if you've read the news recently, it's not always easy to convince everyone.
Yeah. Last question is on French tech. I know it's Montpellier is a French tech hub, by the way. When you took the job of minister in April 2014, it was you've done a lot of things around it, and one of your credit is to have created this wave where now the students, the kids, my 3 kids wants to be entrepreneur, which was not the case 5-6 years ago.
But their dad is a good example.
You've successfully, in my view, created this wave and given pride, encouraged innovation. It's good to be an entrepreneur, which was not great, 5 years ago. So, having said that, where are we today, and what's the plan for next? Do we have a solid plan, or is it still, a buzz which is used by the media or some people?
I believe it is now very solid in the sense that there will be no return to the past. And it is true that even culturally, the sort of spirit towards entrepreneurship has changed. And we see it at the number of young people who want to create their own company. This is
it's a good KPIs.
This is extremely positive.
And we can see this here.
Yeah,
the students, they come.
Which is great, and it's true as well that even 10 years ago, a teenager would have asked his mom or dad, Dad, I want to create my company, and the dad would have said, well, go and get a diploma and a real job first, and then you'll get to do what you want. And this really is changing. But how solid is it in the long term? If you compare it with the years preceding the internet bubbles back at the end of the 90s.
I think remember Bernard Tapie?
Yes.
It's not a good.
What I look at when looking at the economic figures, I feel it is stronger than in the US, and that the trends are extremely positive. Amounts of capital risk in France is literally doubling year after year. And the challenge for us now is really to keep ensuring that the ecosystem grows, including at the European level. What strikes me is that, and I don't want to sound naive, but we're still thinking of Europe as 27, 28 different nations competing one against each other, whereas when you think of the tech industry, innovation, and the needs of funding, people need to start thinking at the European level, which is why I was in Stockholm for that reason, to say to family offices and investment funds, why don't you co-invest with French funds? This is why we're organizing this Franco-German digital conference with President Hollande and Angela Merkel in December, is to try to create a European tech and innovative ecosystem coming from the entrepreneurs. What is on the agenda is have a kind of Erasmus for startups, because I think that is how to build Europe, and this is one of the modest but realistic answers we can give to what's happening at the moment with the Brexit.
And on behalf of IDAT and all the community, we want to thank you, because you've been a tireless ambassador of entrepreneurship, the French tech, the pride, and the technology. So, Axelle, thanks a lot, and have a nice.
Thank you.
I invite you. Bravo.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Merci.